Hey friends, my name is Kate for those of you who don't know me, and I'm going to talk to you today about loving and serving your neighbors. This is something I am particularly passionate about, and I think this is something the Bible speaks to a lot, especially through the life of Jesus. And I think it's a particularly important thing for us to talk about right now in our current cultural moment. I know that everyone this year has experienced some sort of suffering and loss. It's been a challenging year to say the least. And so I think a lot of times our tendency is to want to think solely about ourselves and how do I serve myself? How do I take care of myself in the midst of suffering? But I want to challenge that a little bit and say, okay, how do I continue to think outwardly? How do I continue to look around me and want to serve others? And I also am going to say, I think that can actually be life-giving. I think Jesus designed it in such a way for it to give us life and not to take life from us. And so I think it's counterintuitive, but the Bible says that in order for me to live, I must die. I must die to myself. So I'm going to share with you a few passages from the Bible that talk about how Jesus loved and served other people. And then I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to do that right now. So Matthew 20:26 through 28 says, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And so what that passage is saying is that Jesus, he did not come to earth in order to be served. He could have been a king. He could have walked around and said, "I am the Son of God, bow down to me." He had that right, he had that authority, and yet he chose instead to lay down his rights as a king, to lay down just the throne, to lay down all the riches that he had inherited as a son of God, and chose instead to serve. And you know what? He's challenging us to do the same thing. He's saying, if you want to be great, and if you want to grow in character, if you want to grow in maturity and integrity, then you must serve others. You must lay yourself down. And so a second passage in Luke 4:17 through 21, this is when Jesus starts his ministry. And this is what he chooses to say in order to launch his ministry on this earth. And he says, "God's Spirit is on me. He has chosen me to preach the message of good news to the poor. Sent me to announce pardon to prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to set the burdened and battered free, to announce this is God's year to act." I love that he highlights serving the poor. I love that he highlights setting the prisoner free. He says, I didn't come, to pat the people who are doing really well on the back. He said, I'm coming to set the prisoner free. I'm coming to serve the poor. That is why I came to earth. And so I think that just shows us that he has a particular concern for those who are oppressed. He has a particular concern for those who are on the outskirts. One practical implication of that is look around you. I know some of you are in physical schools right now. Some of you are still virtual. But whatever context you're within, look around you and see who is on the outskirts. See who's marginalized. See who is not being reached out to, and reach out to them, because I think that's who Jesus would be going after. I think he would sit at the lunch table with the people that no one wanted to sit with. So challenge yourself in that way, and you will look more like Christ, I promise you, and you will be attractive to the people around you. You really will. And the final passage I want to share with you is also from Matthew, and it says, "When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like a sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. And I think what he's saying is there are so many people in this world who are wandering around without a shepherd. And they need to know Jesus. And he has called us as his disciples to go and make other disciples. He said the harvest is plentiful. There are so many people around us who are looking for answers. There's so many people around us who are looking for hope and to be saved. And I think we are in such a critical time. There's so much potential because people are looking for hope more than ever before. I think God increases his kingdom in the midst of suffering. And we have had nothing if not suffering in this past year. And so now is a prime time for Christians, for you in your high schools, for you and your families, for you and your communities, and in whatever areas you are serving and living and working in, for you to make disciples. And that sounds like a big fancy word, but ultimately what that means is to love your neighbor, to say, hey, how are you doing? Let me hear about your day. What do you need? How can I be praying for you? Figure out ways to serve. Sign up for Lead. I know of plenty of nonprofits in which you can serve throughout this community. And I know that you can ask many people who served on our missions team at Rush, and they will point you in the right direction as well. But there are plenty of opportunities for you to serve. And I think now, more than ever, it is important that we do that. So I would challenge you to go out and look for your neighbor in need and love him today.